I just gave him my
So-
diary.
Oh, good.
There we are.
There, we are.
There we are. Let's mute us for a moment. You can go ahead and start whenever you like, Gary, and you can probably read this paragraph this time.
Okay.
Or-
What? No, we don't have
We
a
don't
quorum.
have
That's what I was
quorum.
waiting for.
Is
Oh.
Roby a panelist or an attendee?
She's an attendee right now.
Is there another panelist over there or is that you?
That is me.
Okay, so it's 1-3. I'll call the meeting to order of the Yarmouth CPA. So just read this. Don.
Yeah, you can read that.
So this is to formally advise that as required by GL Chapter 30A, 1825 and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16, 2021. The Yarmouth Community Preservation Committee will hold a public hearing at the date and time above. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via alternative public access provided above. Edit?
That's it.
Okay.
Do you want to be here? Okay. Is that how you want to do it?
So I think we're starting our applications today. The first one we have is from the Yarmouth Affordable Housing Trust. So with us is Mary Wigman.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, so my name is Mary Wagan. I am the town affordable housing CDBG program administrator. And I am gonna try to share a PowerPoint that I did today of the application that you all have. Okay, so, here we go. So anyways, you received an application from the Affordable Housing Trust. It's similar to other years. It's for a general deposit of $200,000. With me today, I have Bob Rittenauer, who is the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. He didn't know this, but when he accepted the job as the town administrator, he automatically became the chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust. We don't tell anybody that, we just tell him afterwards.
Surprise, surprise.
And then Karen Green, Director of Community Development, is joining us today too. So usually we have Bob Lawton with us, right? But he's now moonlighting at the council, so. Anyways, so the Affordable Housing Trust is actually a realty trust, so it can buy, sell, lease, borrow, property, real property. It can borrow money. It can accept gifts, and it can donate to, hi, come on in. Why don't you sit over here? My name is Mary Wig, and I'm presenting the application from the Affordable Housing Trust. So we have 5 trustees: Bob Rittenauer, Bob Lawton, Tracy Post, who's on the board of selectmen, Brad Goodwin, who is on the planning board, and Nate Small. And he sits on this committee and also the community. I am just gonna check real quick. Oh, we have attendees.
Have another one. His name
Oh, you can promote Nate and Liz, please.
was this there too. No, actually voting on it. You can always like before we get. to-
Okay, so, Nate, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you, Mary. I couldn't get in.
Okay. And, Liz, can you hear us?
You have to unmute.
promote to panelists, right?
Is she chatting? There she is.
Hi Liz, can you hear
Yes,
us?
hi, yes, I can, everyone. Thank you.
All right, so I hope you can see my PowerPoint.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good, all right, I'm not that, thank you, Liz, it's Mary. Hi. All right, so anyways, I'm the staff person for the Affordable Housing Trust, and I also run the town's community development block grant. The trust is funded mostly with community preservation funds that can receive cash payments in lieu of on-site affordable housing for our zoning bylaw. And, accept gifts and apply for grants. The trust uses a competitive procurement process with the help of our procurement group here in town to, award grants. So this is all in your application, but there is a need for affordable housing in town. 45% of our residents are low to moderate income compared to everybody on the Cape. 27% of our residents have a housing cost burden where they spend more than 30% of their actual income on housing. And we know that our residents are aging out. We have multi-year wait lists for our current zoning. And the lottery that we just had for Yarmouth Gardens had over 600 applications for 40 units. 511 of them actually qualified for the lottery. Still, it's quite a lot, just 40 units. We have a historically low rental inventory. A lot of our rental units are being sold. People have been holding on to property since 2008, the mortgage crisis. Now they're selling their property. Our medium gross rent is $2,200 a month. Typically doesn't include utilities. And we have a historically high medium home sale price of $440,000. Also, most of our housing stock is 30 to 40 plus years old. So we have housing repair needs for people that are, bought their homes originally 40, 50 years ago. We also know from recent housing market studies that this affordable housing crisis is reaching into middle income households here on the Cape. So you will meet young families where you have two working professionals who still cannot afford to buy a home the way that their parents and grandparents were doing. 62% of our housing stock is used year round. So that's that's 38% is not. So that's a big pressure on our housing market. We do have 602 affordable units towards our 10% goal. We are at 5% right now.
Can I ask you a question? That 62% number, is that permanent residents or people who will come down on weekends?
No, so 62% of our year-round housing stock is used year-round.
Okay,
So that's for like. people who-
So was that a recent
That's,
survey? Because I'm sure it was higher than that last year.
so we will get the census data from 2020 in March of 2022. But the American Community Survey does these averages. They'll eventually catch the COVID era, but
And when COVID's over, they would catch.
yeah, yeah, that's what's, it's because they haven't even caught up to the 2020s.
I don't catch it.
thank you.
Ask a question also.
Yes,
On that 600 plus applications for Yarmouth Gardens, are all those applicants from the town of Yarmouth or people from every?
25% of them were from Yarmouth.
Okay.
And I'll have, so that's enough to cover the number of local preference units at the property. So if all pistons are firing right, every single local preference unit there will get filled with somebody that either lives here, works here, or has a child in our school system.
Okay.
But I won't know that until after they fill. Some people already live here and like they live in Simpkin School. And they're like, I'll just throw in an application to see what the units are. And they go and see the units and they don't like. So you have that, you're like, why would anybody didn't, say no to a unit? They're shopping around.
And Mary, how many of those, there's 40 units, right? And 70% of those, is that right?
70% of them go to local,
Right, so Paul, that might,
Okay,
like 28.
I can't do that.
thank you.
I don't have much problem with it.
That's
Um,
most.
But anyways, we're at 5% when Yarmouth Gardens goes,
28.
Hmm?
28 units.
I think it's 28 units, yeah.
It's 70% of 40 units.
And what they do is they look at a unit, they look at unit 101 and they go down the list to see who has the right family size for that unit, the right income, and the local preference. So there's like this big shuffle, like you might fill all the 2 bedrooms with local preference and none of the 3 bedrooms because you don't have any local family that just apply. So it's all this, that's why we work with groups like, Maloney Properties, because they know how to do all that.
So when you can't fill with local applicants, it goes out to,
They go to the general pool. So there's actually 2 lotteries held.
Yeah.
The first one was everybody that had local preference. They all get a local preference number. Those numbers go into a computer and they sort them.
Right.
There's so many applications, they can't draw the names out of the hat. They actually have to use a computer program. Then everybody goes into the general pool. The local preference people and the non-local preference people. So local preference people get 2 shots. And then they run that lottery. So then they go through each unit. And after they fill the first 28 units, then they go to the non-local preference general pool, but it has everybody in it.
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse you. so.
yeah, no, it's,
Okay.
I kind of get it.
That's how it's all supposed to work. Yarmouth Commons, we did pretty good.
Mhm.
62% of the units went to local preference household.
Yeah, okay. Very good.
So when we get Yarmouth Gardens on the inventory, we'll be at 5.3%. Affordable housing. So the trust, our most recent efforts has been the residents at Yarmouth Gardens. In your application, you'll see our production summary. We have 83 new units planned. And I put it X by our priorities, which is the buy down program, the buy down at Mill Pond Village, construction on town-owned land, and veteran homes. I'm going to take a little break from multifamily. And then again, our current priorities, the buy down program. The trust issued an RFP. Housing Assistance Corporation responded to administer the buy down program, and we're in negotiations with them about that. So hopefully that will start in the winter of 2022. Another current priority is Mill Pond Village. Many of you might remember Mill Pond Village. It's chapter 40B at 121 Camp Street in West Yarmouth. It's half done, right? So the original developer went bankrupt and the development rights were gifted to the condominium trust. And so they're working with a local developer to get everything built out, which would be 76 more units, 19 being affordable. They have a fancy wastewater treatment facility in there and they needed some subsidy. So the Affordable Housing Trust has set aside $700,000 to help them with that, payable when they start to produce the affordable. So that will keep the trust busy, planning out for new units. Via the suggestions of the Land Disposition Committee, the trust put comments in about 520 Buck Island Road. We've also been working on land north of Great Western Road. Oh my gosh, that is a tough question. And of course, we're interested in helping the Housing Authority along with the 18 acres that they own.
So we'd written a letter suggesting we offer that for veteran housing.
So,
That gone anywhere been talked about?
yes. So, Cameron doesn't even know this. So, you ready? So right, so the director of the Housing Authority is Wendy Olson. And her contact at the state, the housing authority is a quasi-town, quasi-state agency, right? Their contact at the state is Laura Schufelt. And Laura Schufelt has been meeting with the housing authority. Doesn't want to convene the housing authority too soon in this process. They're concerned about triggering procurement. There was an issue in Nantucket when the housing authority triggered procurement on a so anyways, Laura Schufelt, it works for Mass Housing. She's our field rep for this area, and the housing authority won't be able to go forward with their development without Mass Housing, shepherding this through, because they do all the procurement work. So that's the response, is she didn't want the housing authority to engage in this conversation before it's starting to be procured. So they've received your letter, and I know they haven't responded to it, and that's the reason why. The Age Friendly team has also reached out to the housing authority, and I told them they're not going to respond to you because they don't want to trigger anything. Contact Laura Schufelt, our field rep. Laura is in Yarmouth today, Karen, at the Age Friendly meeting, starting at 3:30. So I'm running there after this. But I will make sure that Laura knows that you did send a letter to the housing authority. Because you had suggested that it be looked at for veteran housing, right?
You said trigger procurement. What does that mean?
So what happened in Nantucket, typically what happens is an affordable housing trust says, okay, we're gonna put affordable housing here, here's the land, here's the money, have at it, right? Maybe we'll say you have to do multifamily housing, we want a minimum of 35 units, we don't want anything over 3 stories, general, parameters. I guess in Nantucket, they started to design the project with, during procurement. That brought the Nantucket into the process too much. And they were supposed to follow prevailing wages.
Okay.
It's very confusing. There was, I think, a challenge, and I think there were competing developers, and everybody was fighting. They ended up resetting.
What was the name of the organization that we worked with in Dennis?
Civic, Cape and Island Veteran Outreach Center.
So at what point do we contact them?
Not yet, because we would have to
So,
procure it and say, hey, we have this opportunity. We have a priority for veteran housing. We have a priority for veteran group housing. Who wants to apply?
I think that the trust is kind of well aware of and is prioritizing this concept of veterans housing, and Mary is well versed in kind of the various organizations, including Civic. And she'll make sure that everybody's kind of on one page. when the time
we
comes.
talked about it before, we have that land, nothing ever happens with it. And anytime it does, the neighbors are up in arms, even though that's what it was set aside for. Now, this, to me, and I think George agrees, this is our best bet. Because I want all those people to stand up at town meetings and oppose veteran housing.
Mhm.
I don't care, I'll say it on the record, let them do it.
And you're gonna fit more than veteran housing.
Oh, I know,
They-
but that would be a start.
I was over in Dennis the day they were doing the landscaping. And I was speaking with the administrators, and they're well aware that Yarmouth is seeking veterans housing.
So let's go to the next slide. Veteran housing, okay. So veteran housing is different than other types of housing. The VA has money for it. They like to do multifamily buildings, SROs, single resident occupancy, and focus in on the homeless population. So this is why this has never been like the best fit for Yarmouth. Maybe someday, but not today. So it's been a little bit of a struggle for me to figure out how to get funds and support. So it looks like it's gonna have to be local nonprofits that are gonna have to partner with us. So,
We would also be asking them to go to Dennis.
that's right.
We help.
I'm not gonna, that's right. I'm not gonna fix that. Okay.
Okay.
So there's three,
Doesn't mean you couldn't go to Barnstable either.
yeah.
For CPA funds.
So Building Dreams runs our town-wide rental program. They buy existing single-family homes and duplexes and rent them out affordably. They have a piece of property on, I want to say Winslow Gray, at the corner of Winslow Gray and Wedgemere. And they're convinced they can split that lot into two. They're gonna construct a new unit, put people that are in their current unit, that's more like a cottage, into the new unit, knock down the old property and build something like this and rent it out with a veteran preference. We can have a veteran preference. And DHC will the state will let us still put the unit on the inventory, the subsidized housing inventory. If we keep the veteran preference in out years, it'll fall off the subsidized housing inventory. So it's just something for us to discuss in the town. I don't care. It falls off the subsidized housing inventory and we keep the veteran preference there forever. But anyways, Building Dreams is willing to, do the veterans preference. Our additional community partners are on the right. We had a meeting with the Habitat for Humanity. The trust had them come in and talk about an action plan for the town. They too said, yes, we will do a veteran preference home. Again, if it continues on after the initial sale, then we have to talk about whether we want to keep that veteran preference there or not, because it won't. Once in out years, it'll fall off. But that might be okay. Then the Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach Center, I'm meeting with them tomorrow. And they have a new staff person, Jim Seymour. And so I talked to him right away about the group home. They're thinking of doing affordable rentals. So stay tuned. I still think there's a need for, a group home. He might come back to me and say, nope, all of our veterans we have enough units. We want to do year-round rental housing. Gonna meet with him tomorrow.
Well, when we did the one at Dennis, they said there is not enough.
Right. Yes. Well, I'm gonna let him know that everybody is supportive of that in town.
Mhm.
I still think they would do well with that. And then the Mass Military Support Foundation has money. And so they're coming to the trust in December to talk about, kind of like we did with Habitat, what's the action plan to create veteran housing here in Europe. So I've got some things going on. Also, we have a housing production plan update. That's our local comprehensive plan for affordable housing. We've contracted a consultant, Karen Sonneborg. She's working on our housing needs assessment. And we have a date for a housing summit. It's January 11th. And we're gonna start at 5 o'clock. And I just put an email out to the senior center to confirm that we can use the ballroom. So we think we're gonna be in the room. We're gonna repeat that virtually in February sometime for people who couldn't make the in-person one. And so that our game plan right now is we would, get comments, we'd present our housing needs assessment, get some comments from people, get some ideas about housing. What does affordable housing mean to you? What do you think our strategies, where should we put it? What should be our priorities? Then I'm hoping we can gather all that information, get a nice community survey, get that out there for people who couldn't come to the summit. That will help us prioritize our strategies. And then the rest, you write your draft plan, you hold some public meetings, you finalize your plan, you get your formal approval from the planning board and the board of selectmen. And then you submit it all up to the state. You hope that your 100-page paper gets an A+. And then here's the request for funding. We usually do, we put the biggest amount of money, the largest amount of money into affordable housing creation. Try to get one unit. We put a little bit aside every year to go in and save a unit, you know, we have those deed restricted units on Setauket. Setauket Pines, that is at Plymouth Road, Plymouth
yeah.
Road, right? And German Hills, which is Rhine Road and Dutchland Way. And those, some of those have old deed riders, so when they go up for resale, sometimes they need some advertising help or some rehab help or a little buy down to keep them affordable. And you can see that's matched with CDBG money. The other funds on the right is that other program I run. It's an entitlement grant, it's a community development block grant from US HUD. So that's over to the right, that's matched with that money. The next line is affordable housing support. You can see the trust right now is not budgeting anything for that. But over to the right, CDBG has some money through that CARES Act from 2020. That's COVID relief money. So we help people with mortgage utilities, mortgage payments, utility payments, rental payments, that kind of stuff. And then there's my salary. So the trust pays most of that. CDBG pays for every hour I work. So Karen's always trying to, hey, Mary, work more CDBG hours. And then program administration, over the right, CDBG, that's to help pay for the housing production. We have to. And so the bottom, you know, the whole program is $365,000. $200,000 would be a general deposit award from this committee and any questions?
George?
Mary, is there anything magic about the 200,000 number? Why isn't it 400,000?
So back in the day, a 10% allocation, right? 10% of your money should be allocated every year for affordable housing. And that kind of hovered, you know, between 180,000 and 230,000 every year. And one year, sorry, Nate, but I remember very distinctly, Nate goes, just put $200,000 down. And that's just been our.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly right. It's just been our number every year and it seems to work. You remember last year we came with a special request for the buy down. But 200,000 a year seems to build up our budget so that if we have something brandy new like the veteran housing, we have money in the bank. We have about $1 million.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we haven't gone to 400, is that's the number one question. You get a town meeting, well, how much money do you have?
Yeah.
So until you spend that, people aren't overly anxious to keep funding it, so we want to keep it going. That's the question we get asked all the time.
And then when there's special requests or special programs, they make an additional ask.
So last year we had two applications, right? We had the general deposit of 200,000 and almost, it was like 375,000 for the buy down. And you can see it took us all this time to put the RFP out. We're just about to start the buy.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, you know, it's always kind of, there's got to be a logical answer to this. I just don't. And I'm not there yet, but in terms of your salary comes out of community preservation fund.
So what happens is the general deposit goes into, you know, the accounting system
Yeah.
under the account of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah.
And then when my payroll is processed, right, it hits that account.
Okay, well, I guess that's my question. So if community preservation didn't exist, we wouldn't have you.
So back before 2008, my salary was paid by the general fund.
Yeah, so
And then,
this is what kind of is interesting to me
Mhm.
about the community preservation fund. It seems like it picks up some of the heavy lifting for the town. That
Well,
maybe
It
should be,
certainly helps.
should
It-
be
it-
helped, but at the same time, you know, is the town budget analyzed to the point where somebody might say, you know what, if we do this or we do that, if we cut this, we, you know, or we're a little more careful in that area. Can we pay for this administrator? And then more money would be available for projects. More than, because I don't know, I can't remember if there's other instances of this as well. There's just kind of,
Our department has a number of kind of special funds.
Yeah.
So our wages are offset by CPA,
Yeah.
straight CPA. Affordable Housing Trust funds,
Yeah.
because we consider it once it comes out of CPA and goes into the trust, that's a trust fund. Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund and the Community Development
Yeah.
Block Grant Fund.
and I know all of this is okay. I know everybody's following the regulations as far as, but it seems to me that's a little bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul, you know? And as a town entity, as a member of the community, it just doesn't, maybe I just need to learn more about it. It just seems to me more money could go to projects if the town was able to pay the freight in terms of the administration needed.
My feedback would be it's kind of more than administration. It's a lot of kinds of hands-on support for these programs that might not otherwise happen without staff. We wouldn't really have a buy-down program
Yeah.
without.
I'm not
this
saying there shouldn't be
piece.
staff. I'm just saying
Oh,
maybe it should be part of the general budget as opposed to this. And maybe that would be so problematic that it's impossible. But it seems to me that maybe at least, has it ever been revisited?
It
You
was
said
also-
back in 2008.
It was in 2008, we had that budget crisis, people were being laid off.
Yeah.
I had been paid by the general fund and then I went in and it's worked out better for me than I thought. I thought that I was taking a
Right,
big
well,
chance,
I
but
don't want to upset the apple cart, but it seems to me that if that came as, if this methodology came as a result of that crisis, maybe it behooves the town to take a look at this and say, do we still have to do it this way? And if we did it another way and more money was available for projects in
Time
town.
for it to be
so-
reversed.
I think that we're entering the budget cycle, and I'm sure.
Are you sure?
We all think like that. Yeah, I don't know. Something
Well,
we can discuss.
It was
but-
also part of our case when it came to reducing CPA. You realized, selectmen, you are reducing salary for staff. And we weigh it off against, like what they do down there in Howard with the people going, why don't you do more projects? Because we couldn't afford to do it with our staff. So you'd actually lose projects by running them through the town, but they can't do anymore. So we're trying to do all this affordable housing stuff, but it's a lot of money to administer it.
Okay, well, if that's
It's a
the
lot of
case,
work. Mary does.
So it's a
lot
fine
of
thing.
stuff.
I'm not saying it
Right.
isn't.
Yeah.
I'm just,
No,
I'm
no, and
just, I'm
and I
asking a
think-
question about how it's paid for.
And I think
And-
that most of these affordable housing projects, the number of affordable housing projects that are funded through CPA that Mary's kind of touching in
Yeah.
one way or another, I think it's wholly appropriate that it be coming from CPA.
oh, right, so you know how like you guys sometimes give money to like Habitat or Hedge directly,
That's
right?
what I was referring to
Right.
as catch. we're
I
always telling them to
administer
do more.
those. I
I'm
mean,
not
I give them
trying
to, I give
diminish
them
your
to
effort,
you, I think
believe me.
eventually to put into Munis, but I do a little bit of community preservation
Yeah.
administration.
Please don't misunderstand me. I'm
No.
not saying you don't do a great job. I'm not saying that the money is at all spent in any kind of frivolous way. What I'm saying is, does the town, because there's instances where I think the town looks at CPA as a little bit more of a piggy bank than they should. And then, and I don't know if that's true, unless there's some assurance that on a regular basis, the town is looking at their budget and saying, well, gee, we can do this in a different way and not have to rely so much on these CPA funds. And in that way, we can do more projects in town. I don't
Well, they
know.
absolutely do that, Paul. We know they do that.
Okay,
But,
that's fine.
they always, it's a capital funding project, they would say they don't have money. Well, don't have it go to CPA. So they do use us as a piggy bank.
Yeah.
And we've been pretty careful.
Well, yeah, and I think it's a great thing. It's just a matter, I just hope everybody is aware of, you know, there's two sides to this, the CPA and then the general fund. And are we looking very carefully at the general fund and trying to purchase or buy or afford everything possible within that general fund before going to the CPA fund, you know? And rely in the budgetary process on, oh, well, we can put that on CPA, you know, as opposed to something else that might be, could be adjusted, for example. You know, some other budget, police, fire, whatever, you know, all those easy topics to talk about.
Christine?
My observation is strictly environmental, and as with the advent of sewers coming on, I would think it'd be appropriate that dense building projects be directly linked with those districts that are coming on the earliest. You know, I don't think a project in District 6 or 7 would be appropriate if you have the land in District 1 or 2 or 3 that's going to be coming on
Which is
earlier
gonna bring us back
for the
to,
protection of our groundwater.
Okay,
and people don't want, you know, you're coming up against this now with Yarmouth Gardens. People want no more affordable housing on 28, but that's gonna be the first district to come online.
That's it.
So you can't have both.
Yeah,
You can't put affordable housing way out in the woods down by Matakees and think that's gonna tie into the sewer system.
well, they should be running lines up Forest Road. They should be running a line up Higgins Cove.
Well, they've been doing that in Barnstable and it's taken forever.
so any type of multifamily, you know, housing with, you know, a significant amount of units, it's gonna have its own wastewater treatment
Right.
facility. The two that are on Route 28, Yarmouth Commons and Yarmouth Gardens was, and I didn't see the final engineering utility plan. It's supposed to have a hookup so that
It's
when
queued and ready to go.
it's queued, when the sewer pipe goes down Route 28, their flow goes into,
The pipes already there.
that was a condition of funding.
It's just smart planning.
It is, I agree.
Well,
with
that
you.
was part of the reason for doing this affordable housing on 28.
Anything from Nate or Liz?
Nate, Liz?
No, great job, Mary, as always. I think you hit all the key points.
Hey everyone, it's Liz. I actually agree with Paul on the part of the salary portion. Mary, can you confirm that actually 10% of, or Gary or Dawn Marie, maybe you can confirm that 10% of CPC is actually going to affordable housing and not to salary? I understand there's budgetary stuff, but if that is a priority of the community, is to have 10% housing and then 10% of CPC funds to go towards it, it should go to actual housing rather than, so if Mary needs more than $200,000, then that should be incorporated in it to make sure that her salary is sustaining the programs that is used for CPC funds. But I still think that 10% really should be going to the actual housing projects that she's supporting.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
I'm
something
pretty
the
sure.
committee
My
can
question
talk
on
about
that
it, because your 10%, I'm sorry, is a minimum.
But you
You're-
can take
you're
5,
required.
you can take 5%, I believe.
We do take 5% for
5% for
administration.
administrative purposes.
That's correct. And then we take 10, so every year, the first article out of all the CPA articles are the housekeeping articles.
Right.
And that's where we distribute the funding from the new revenues that come in. And we put the money into administration. We put the money into the 3 designated reserves: housing, historic, and open space. And that's a 10% minimum. So, I mean, the committee is welcome to
Right.
appropriate more than 10% into those
It's
accounts.
always,
if
it's
that's what
always
you want.
worked at the 10%. But, if we don't put money into salaries, you can approve all the projects you want, but who's going to administer them?
Yeah, Gary,
No,
That's
I-
100% right. If I can just say one thing, I haven't been on actually all three of these committees for many, many years. I think everyone appreciates what Mary does, and some people probably know a little bit more than others, but not one of these affordable units, I'm not even talking projects, would ever come to fruition unless Mary was there or somebody was there to facilitate this. Not one
Well,
of us can
I
do.
think okay, hold on, Nate, I don't mean to I'm hearing everybody say the same thing, and Paul and I agree with you. We're not debating that. We are not debating what Mary's value is or anything. We're not even concerned about it. We're just asking and making sure and verifying that the 10% is really there for housing, and then whatever is identified for Mary, because yes, we agree. Mary does a lot. I know for a fact, I used to work with the woman. So I know how much she does, and I know how much of a gem she is for our community, because every other community that I've worked for talks about wanting to replicate Mary and bringing her to their communities.
Right,
So
so
I'm
last
not
year-
debating that.
So
So
last year, this committee decided as a whole, which I was in agreement with, to lower everybody's ask price for their applications. So, we can always sit here and talk about asking for more money. Everybody wants more money, but we have made the decision to come in at 200,000 for the trust every year, because that seems like the number that this committee decides they just like to approve.
no,
So-
and I agree. I think, Nate, I think that's actually 100% right, that 200,000 really should be for housing. But I want to make sure that out of that 200,000, Mary's salary isn't being taken out of that, and actually 140,000 or 160,000 is only being dedicated for housing. That 200,000 is 100% of that 200,000 is going towards housing, and then it's identified whatever portion of Mary's salary is coming from CPC is taken from another section of our community money that we receive every year.
It doesn't make sense that part of the housing program is to have the administration. You don't just buy the wood, and the nails. It's a housing program. So, it's very legitimate, and I don't want it separated out like Mary's not a part of the housing program. I think that's a misnomer.
I agree with that.
So, Liz, are you suggesting that the 200 should be 250? And then the 50 is covered for Mary, and then 200,
260.
260. Okay, 260. So that way Mary's salary is covered, and there's a net of 200 being used on housing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm making sure that 10% of our CPC funds is going towards actual housing, and then whatever is additional money to pay for the staff support to make sure that these programs are sustained. If that's necessary to come out of CPC funds, I think that should be part of it. Yes. This is, okay, so housing is a Board of Selectmen goal. It is a community goal. And if it is 10% of our community goal, then we as a CPC funds should be putting 10% towards the goal of that, of achieving it, not 9% or 8.5%. I really think, but this is a finance committee thing. That's whatever. I'm just suggesting that that's really, and this goes into then my next thing. Mary, when you're talking about the actual plan that's coming in on January 11th and then the virtual one in February, I want to make sure that, yes, I'm thankful that it's going before the planning board because I am on the planning board, but we're doing the visioning project, as well as I believe the selectmen are doing their strategic goals coming up, and housing is going to be their top priority. So I believe that, and that's what's talked about in the visioning program process that we've been doing outreach on. So again, this is where I want to make sure that 10% is really matching and aligned with what our community is telling us that they really should be, not 8.5 or 9% but 10%.
Right.
Thank
And I
you.
think, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about 10%. 200 is not 10%. This 200 is just an application for the trust. Am I correct, Mary?
Right, off the top of my head, I don't know what the 10%
So
is.
10%,
I didn't bring
I
the
try,
budget.
seem to recall it being 235.
It may be less now because of the reduction and the exemptions.
So.
Right, the 100,000 exemption cut into that, right?
If you take into consideration the special projects that we get funded, for example, the buy down program, the motel redevelopment, the home ownership rehab that was managed by Housing Assistance Corporation and now by Hetch, you will see that more than 10% of your, year in, year out, more than 10% of your community preservation money is spent on brick and mortar production of units.
Well, we know that's true. Well,
Yeah.
we'd have to go back to Karen Lowe's, the pie chart.
I was gonna remind you of the pie chart.
Because we have a trust that has that flexibility of acting in between town meetings, that's why we like to have a general deposit every year.
Well, can we see a breakdown of that somehow?
Yes, Don Marie and I will work on that.
My other question, just one question.
And I just wanted,
Yeah, I'm
just before I forget, Liz, all those plans and local, all that, the priority setting of goals and all that stuff, our housing consultant, Karen Sonneborg, knows about them. And the January 11th date, the Board of Selectmen actually are giving up their regular meeting on January 11th so they can all come to the housing summit. And it does have to be, that plan has to be approved by the planning board and it has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen before it goes up to the state. So Liz, thank you for, bringing up all the different parties that are important to this process because by statute or regulation from the state, they're actually required to be part of the process.
Absolutely, and it really can't be conflicting messages. I think it has to be aligned in order to have value and weight. And you can demonstrate that all of these documents and all of these members of our community are aligned appropriately to make sure that this priority is a top priority and that we are really working and striving to make it come to fruition. So thank you.
Well,
Yeah, just one question, but I'll preface with saying, Mary, I know you do wonderful work.
Thank you. No, I know.
Don't let it ever be misunderstood. But a quick question on the cost estimates and the other funds. I see 13,403. Where does that money come from?
So basically, that's Community Development Block Grant from US HUD.
Okay,
So I just use, and we do it through the budget cycle every year. We figure out like in the last 3 years, how much money did I really get paid? Like how many salary hours were really reimbursed to the town by the federal government? And so that's our
All
line item
the
in the
general
budget.
fund fronts that money. And then
They front
as
the money?
Mary, yes.
and
we
then
budget-
get reimbursed.
Correct.
Okay, fine. It's a matter of taking something that I know is terribly complex and try to break it down so people like me can understand it. So I appreciate
I
that.
used to not put in that other funds column.
Yeah,
And
I just,
I'm like, wait a minute, we do leverage federal money and so.
yeah,
I think Heck was the one who used to tell us that for every project they do, they have it itemized, and I think, if I remember correctly, they were saying it's like 18 to 20% of that has to be administrative for every project they do. So,
Hetch does 18%. Yep,
so I did remember correctly.
yep, you
So if
did.
they took 20% of 200,000, that is 40.
Right, CDBG, we can only do 20%
Yeah, we're
Of our
limited on
entitlement.
CDBG.
for administration. And so, anything, to me, anything, less than 20% is where we're running efficient. When nonprofits come in and say we need 25%, we're like, why?
Well, everybody objected to that when they did it. They go, well, you want us to do more projects and we need more
Yeah.
money to administer that. They just don't fall from the sky. You have to
No, I
pay
get
for
that.
them
So,
to do it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a matter of how we allocate that money and maybe it's something we ask the finance committee.
Brewster has a part-time person. Falmouth has a full-time affordable housing person, and Eastham started, a full-time person started today. So slowly we're seeing, and
So
Barnstable.
let me ask a silly
has-
question. Are you full-time or part-time?
Yeah, I'm full-time.
And your salary is 67,017?
It's a
If it is,
little.
you should get a raise.
It's right there and I'm happy. But I'll talk to the personnel. If
So-
you want me to.
I got a quote, how did Orleans ever hit 10%?
I think
What's
they
their
have
secret?
some, I think they don't have a lot of year-round housing stock, right? First of all, and Wise Living did some large 40B developments and they just put them over.
So we have a lot of houses. I mean, our year-round stock is like 12,700 properties. So the 10% is a hefty number. If you know, have a much smaller year-round
Yeah.
housing base,
Right, so when they're saying 10%, it's 10% of
year-round.
year round. Because
Yes,
that would be the difference.
right. And I will get for you, and I, sorry I didn't put it in, because Kathy Williams, our brilliant town planner, asked me to not just put what our percentage is, but what is our real number. We have 602. So there are some towns that are above us in percentage, but don't have 602 affordable units. And I am determined to work regionally because we don't want all the, right? We don't want all this, some rumors out there, oh, put affordable housing with this infrastructure. Like, wait a minute, time out. Everybody's gonna have 10%.
I think
So-
the last kind of important point to just Gary, to your headed Orleans do it. I think that we've taken the strategy of not having just one solution for affordable housing either. And so, you know, Mary puts a lot of work on the types of projects that you see on Route 28, but it's also a lot of work on the one-offs that are here and there. And then it's not just creating, it's retaining the affordable housing as the projects turn over, property owners move. How do we go about keeping those affordable units on the inventory? And all of that is kind of part of the strategy. It's not a one size fits all.
So just one last question, I probably shouldn't bring it up at a point. Over at Mill Pond,
Yes,
is there an affordable unit in there now?
Mill Pond Village.
Yeah.
So I think what, 60 units have been built. 11 are affordable, 11 out of that.
They're occupied.
Yep, they're occupied. There were 2 lost to the affordable housing program in there due to foreclosure. Because that was done, that was built right before the Fannie Mae Universal Deed Rider that survived foreclosure. Remember David Reed, God love him, he fought so hard to have a provision in those deed riders for the first couple of phases of Mill Pond Village, where the affordable homes would survive foreclosure. And everybody Fannie Mae, state, HUD, oh, no, you can't do that. Well, eventually it happened, but Mill Pond Village, the first couple of phases missed that. So there was a foreclosure prevention fund that David Reed negotiated. That every house, they had to give us $2,000 into our foreclosure. So, but this point on, I think phase 3, all those units have the new deed rider. Any resale gets the new deed rider. And from this point on, 19 more units will have a better deed rider. It survives foreclosure, it's in perpetuity. If we, for some reason, cannot find an affordable buyer, we get the next best thing. You know, the people that just missed the income eligibility, they get a shot at. So we can put in somebody who's maybe moderate income in those units with still the deed rider in place. And when they go to sell, again, it goes to the low income opportunities first, and then, yeah, it drives everybody crazy, the deed rider in Mill Pond Village, but it's worth it.
And that's why it's good to have town money into the project, because it gives us a seat at the
Right.
table.
Yeah.
Talking about these deed restrictions.
Anybody else? Any questions of Mary? Nate, Liz, do you have any more questions for Mary at this point?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
I'm good also, thanks.
All right, and Don Marie and I will follow up with
The
the
information.
grand analysis of the money. Okay,
Okay, Mary.
all right,
Thank you
thank
very
you. Off to my next meeting.
Good job.
Go and put in some
Thank you.
overtime so we get some more. CEs. All right, so next, I think we have the, it's like we're way past 3:15.
Yeah,
but-
sorry about that.
But we have the representatives for the ancient cemetery here, so if you guys want to introduce yourself, I don't think you call you guys, ladies. Just introduce yourself for the people who might be watching, and then you can explain your project. We'll
You'd
go
like to
around,
sit here and
ask any questions.
Oh, yeah, that we know.
And Roby, I've promoted you to panelist.
Yeah, like, Roby should be there, and I'm here as well to try to help
Yeah.
elaborate. If we can.
Doesn't look like Robbie.
No, that-
was there. Oh, she is there. Okay.
So we've got this great group with the Friends of the Ancient Cemetery, and they've been doing some great work, as even as part of the DPW open house, they had a display with regards to the cleaning of the headstones and the great work that they've done. So they've been very helpful in that particular cemetery. So with that said, I know that the town is on this request, but they can certainly provide the detail behind that and answer any questions you might have. And Roby's been involved in the project as well, so she's here.
So thank you. My name is Melanie Barron. We just, because we've given you a lot of information, we were just gonna go over who we are and what we've done and what we're asking to continue to do. Just do that as a quick overview. Our group is the Friends of Ancient Cemeteries, about 20 volunteers, and who do the work in the cemetery physically, as well as about 8 genealogists who do the research on the data that comes from what the volunteers have collected. This summer of 2022 will be the 5th year of the project, the 4th year that Laurel and I have worked together to manage it. And just quickly what we've done, it's now over 900 gravestones that have been cleaned. We've given you some pictures so you can see the difference between cleaned and not cleaned, which is quite startling. What that has done, and Laurel brought some examples, because I know when we say files and records, it's not clear what we mean. And I did talk with Mary Maslowski 2 days ago about working with the records that we've collected.
So this is, and they're so various that I brought you the extreme. There are files that have data sheet. Every stone that's cleaned has a 2-sided data sheet with all the information and a photograph. There's a before and after photograph. And then there's some kind of family information about the person. So that is one file. This is another file where there's just this much information. Lots of family history, lots of genealogy, lots of information maybe about where they lived, what wars they might have fought in. So there's not any standard, just so many pages per file. They range from that to this. Pass it around if you want.
But the idea is that this is the history of Yarmouth that's never been collected before and put together in a way that one of the things we're asking for is help to connect it to cemetery find, which is the town's records about who's in the cemetery. And because of the work that Laurel has done, we have found that cemetery find either has missing information that we have because we found the stones. So for example, sometimes from Cemetery Find, it says somebody's interred. Well, we know who it is, we know background, and we'd like to connect it to Cemetery Find so that the town has the history, not just files that we have. And with your help, thank you for last year's, 2 years ago grant. We're in the process of buying file cabinets to put all those records in the cemetery department office. We've got a website, which I wish I had planned, we could have shown off our website to you. But we've got 13 different videos on the website. It's where we have all the information for the volunteers. It's got the data sheet so they can download it. We've got a video I made by 2 of our volunteers about how to clean a gravestone, which is actually pretty funny in some ways. One of the things that Laurel and I did in the winter when we couldn't be doing anything else because of COVID, we found, gathered, and inventoried all 168 cemetery maps from the 7 cemeteries that are in Yarmouth. We pulled them together from where we could find them, and we're ready to move forward with those to be able to organize them, check to see if there's any that are valuable that they should be preserved, but check because one map has a burial, the other map doesn't have a burial. Somebody's got to figure out which is the accurate map for each cemetery. Because of COVID, in order to get the volunteers going last summer, we met with all 20 one-on-one in the cemetery in order to give them their assignments, show them the stones, go over any questions and do it. Again, because we couldn't get together the way we did the year before in meetings in the library or in this room, we hosted backyard gatherings with tea and cookies, Laurel bakes cookies, to be able to talk again, to be able to keep touch with the volunteers, because people keep saying, how do you keep 20 volunteers coming back every year? And it's the outreach, it's the information, it's taking care that they know that we care about what we're doing. We had a celebration last year and this year. We're planting daffodils in the cemetery so that in the spring, it really looks nice. It was very helpful. Last year, when you gave us the grant, it was the Historic Society of Old Yarmouth that managed the fiscal part of the grant. This year, we are grateful that DPW is willing to stand in our stead with us. The 6 areas that we're asking for help for, we've sent some pictures of broken stones, so you can see that there are stones that are broken, that are damaged, that are leaning, and we're asking for help to get a professional.
Part of the reason that that's such an issue is that there hasn't been expenditures in the past for this kind of repair and care. So yes, there's a fair amount that needs doing, and it needs a professional stone conservator to come in and sort of look at what's there and prioritize, take care of the worst ones up to a certain expenditure. Just start and do the worst ones first, but come back every year and continue that kind of a process.
The second is the sort of standard equipment and supplies for the volunteers to do the cleaning, as well as a little bit of money for the Xeroxing, printing, and to put the materials together that we hand out to the volunteers. The third is that we're relying on the website for education, research, data forms, new books, new references, so that they can do the research that goes into the records that are being, 1,000 of them have already been compiled. Section A, there's a drawing of what Section A is. There was a couple of questions that John Marie asked about where is Section A. There's a sketch there about the.
And we've been cleaning the entire, the worst stones are the most needy stones throughout the cemetery. But we've come to realize that, we've gotten a lot of that done, 900 plus done. But we need to now complete one whole section so we can concentrate on everything that needs to be done in terms of mapping, so that we can say all of section A is complete. It's 2/3 complete now, and they'll work on that in 2023. But I think it's important to have one whole section systematically completed now that we've done sort of the ones that needed the most throughout the old section of the cemetery. There is no accurate map of that cemetery.
The next area that we're asking for help in is the digitization of the 1,000 records, so that the town would have the history that we've been collecting. And there will be concerns about how to do that, since it's town software and town access to the software. And that's something that Mary Maslowski is going to talk to the administrator about, to be sure that whatever we do, we will do with her, because she's got her own systems that she's using to save records and digitize records, so that we would like to be able to collaborate with her to make sure we're doing what she's doing. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got those 168 maps rolled up all over the place in the cemetery in Chandler Bay. We've got beautiful map files, and we'd like to have help organizing them, checking them, seeing which ones can actually be thrown out because they're duplicates. They're just all over the place.
There are probably more. We found that there's others that might come into this inventory, but they're all on a spreadsheet now. With the name of the cemetery, the date when it's known of the map, any characteristics about the map, the size, the measure, what kind of material it's on. But that's just the basic inventory of what's there. And somebody needs to decide how to archivally say what is the top ones that they want, and the others, there's just probably 13 of the same map. These are not old maps, they're 1990s, 2010. I don't think there's anything there from the 1800s. It's all 1900s and more, and on a wide range of materials, blueprints, acrylic,
cigarette holes.
yeah, these were never, they were working maps. We have the coffee stain, the cigarette holes, the lunch meats, everything on there that tells us that, somebody was working on this. That's,
Okay.
we need your help.
Start with any questions. George, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Great project. If folks haven't seen the digital, show that HSOY created on the, HSOY provided the, the funds. It's amazing to see it. And so you can go on your website. I'll go on HSOY also. So strongly recommend you take a look at that. It's really fabulous. So I have a few questions on the budget. You've touched on some. The digitization and record management. I know you talked to Mary. The clerk's office received the large CPA grant two cycles ago to digitize the town's information and records. So I think, it's real important to get a sense of possibly rolling that into Mary's project.
Oh,
So that, the funds are there, she's working it. That would be a way to, save some CPA money. So, and gets to your point of making sure that it's seamless and that you know, I don't think it makes sense for you guys to create your own,
Mhm.
but to work within her time schedule to see how that is gonna fit.
Yep.
So the question on the information, communication, $2,400. And 240, so how are you funding that now? How are you funding
The website,
the website and what's that?
there's money in the last budget that you gave us for
Okay.
web development. So we've
Okay.
been watching how much was already allocated and
Mhm.
charging against it.
Okay,
That's one of the most vital links of the project right now because
We can't get together.
well, even if we could get together, it's a way for each of the volunteers to get the information
Mhm.
as they need it. So if they can't remember what we call a certain thing on the inventory,
Mhm.
they can go to the website. It's where they print out the pages now. It's a great link. The web developer, Maria,
Mhm.
has linked every resource that we could find online
With a live link. so
with
they
a
just have
live
to-
link. So, you know, if you're looking up some family information and you go to find a Sears book or some other repository of that information, it's just linked. So you
Mhm.
you don't have to be at a library. In other words, it's available and there's, I don't know how many of them, quite a few.
And it's a great vehicle for people in different parts of the country or the world to be able to
Well,
do research and. come
very
on it.
quickly, I'll just add that we've just gotten an email yesterday from a person in Indiana who
Saw the stories.
something and it was her ancestor, and she has a great deal of information about this sea captain. She has his trunk, she has a lot of other artifacts, and is very excited. And we keep meeting people in the summer. It's become almost like a cemetery tourism stop.
Mhm.
And we
And
have
there
a
are such
brochure that we
things.
hand out. I gave everybody
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
brochure. that
So you
can
meet
see.
a lot of people who just are using that resource. So that's why I think that expenditure is something that we want to keep. if we can.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
The data that's been collected is in a 35 field spreadsheet. If you look on the very back of your holding, you
Mhm.
can see when it's added in person by person, the magic of the spreadsheet will produce data. Again, historic data about what's true in Ancient Cemetery.
You know, that graph is from a year ago, but it already is telling you something visually that you didn't know before. It's telling you when families change from slate to marble to granite, or at what ages people died. There's a whole slew of them, but visually, it's much easier than to try to explain the social history of the town.
Right.
And one of the videos on the website is just about the spreadsheet
Mm,
and just analyzing the
Last year's
data.
spreadsheet. Yeah.
And because
Different
it's so robust in terms of what's on the spreadsheet, this we're not asking money for, but just to say that if, in terms of our collaboration with the cemetery department and Bill Bullock, other people in the town are saying, well, what about my cemetery? What about Woodside? And Laurel and I have talked about if there are interested citizens in the community that want to take on another cemetery, that we will share how we did this and what the mechanics are. And if they use the website, they will be able to see how to proceed. So that it could perhaps pick up one of the smaller cemeteries, might make it easier to help other people tackle one.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are a lot of things we learned the hard way, but we would love to share. If we could get other interested people in another region of the town. It just needs leadership, and the volunteers are great, and they come because they stay because they want to be educated. They want to get something back from this project, and they do. They both have learned a lot, and because we keep feeding them more information or more learning about cemeteries and gravestones in general and the people there.
Great, thank you. Great, Christine.
You've done a wonderful job so far, and thank you very much. Looking at the application, there's like 4 different projects going on here. What you need is estimates for each one. I'm only seeing one estimate attached. I see, Jeff, you have a RFP, draft for an RFP?
I did the beginning of one that I,
Yeah, we have templates for that. At the dollar numbers that we're looking at, quotes would suffice. It's not one that you'd have to, get real fancy with as far as requests for
Well, we need
official proposals.
We need something in, writing. You need an estimate for a request. So maybe we need something back from any of the companies that you heard back from.
I have not.
no, we just knew that, I just learned that we needed to do that. So in the revised package that you
Anything
have,
that isn't done by volunteers, it's going to be done by
No,
an
this would-
outside person. And
this
you
would
have- you're going to put a fence up, you need an estimate for the fence,
Right.
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 So you would need estimates for the $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's also confusing between administrative expenses for an organization and project expenses, and it's a little blurred,
What's
some
the
of it.
administrative?
Like the $300, the cost of
That's Xerox and-
copying and ink
Ink.
cartridges.
Yeah.
It's a gray area whether or not that's an administrative expense for your organization, or whether or not it's a project expense.
No, it's definitely a project.
Okay.
It's definitely for the materials that the volunteers then use to fill out the data sheets and the other
Okay.
stuff like that. So it's definitely that.
And the field equipment, you have a very complete, listing.
Mhm.
The communication, you have your an estimate for
Mhm.
for the 2,400. The $700 for the map, plot, and photograph section A. Is the photographer a volunteer?
Not at this point. We have photographs, working photographs of stones that the volunteers have taken. And we've found that they're not really sufficient for permanent record keeping. So we need somebody, a professional, who gives us standard photographs for every single
If you
stone.
could get an estimate, for that.
Yep.
And your digitization, let's see,
The first one you mentioned, the $5,000 that we hope would be annually for the preservation consultant, or the person who's qualified to come and oversee. That's been difficult because they need to come here from New York, from wherever they are, and oversee what we have in order to give us an estimate on how it works. I know 2 of the 3 that we've listed, and I might be able to send them photographs. But our thought was that we would allocate a certain amount of money, $5,000, and have them do that much work of the stones that most need doing.
yeah, that's kind of backwards, yeah.
Because it's gonna be a lot more than $5,000 to get the work done.
Yeah.
I mean, so we would
And
ask
they would
for,
choose which would be the most vulnerable stones. We shouldn't be choosing that. Somebody should come and say, well, this may not look bad, but this is gonna be gone if you don't do something within the next 5 years. So they are the ones who need to make the assessment first and give us a 5-year plan of what they could do
Do
each
they have
year.
any kind of a website that would, help us?
They do.
Yeah. I mean,
There's listed,
If you- I,
the first 3 are listed there.
I wrote
Well,
up, I wrote up a
Done that
scope of-
before, it's an up to amount, and,
up to, up to
I mean,
that.
all of this would be up to amount. So I can't get a hard estimate on every
Yeah.
nail on every
Yeah.
project. So the 5,000, you would put it out to bid, you get your RFP, and then report back to us what they're gonna do for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
And
did a
I'm
scope
sure
of
if they're just gonna
services.
come here and look at it, they're gonna charge you for that.
They would charge us for the assessment part of
Yeah.
it. Yes, they would. Yeah, they would.
And then on the conservation of the cemetery maps, you need some kind of an estimate of, $200 per map or something,
No, it would, yes.
It's
We
gonna
do,
be per hour.
it's per hour, and we consulted with 2 archivists, who both have given us basically the same number, which is you can get a graduate student who may be willing and able to do this for $40 an hour. If you get a professional, it's more likely to cost you, a professional who comes down here and just works on these maps, it's more likely to cost $80. We think that what really needs doing would be more at the $40 level. Most of these are not archival maps, but somebody has to decide what is archival and how to stabilize those, and to just put these maps in the right condition in order for storage. So
So when you say you want an estimate, would it be a letter from the 2 people we just spoke to who gave us the information?
It's just
Something like
to go
that?
by, like when we were preserving the town map, the 1883, whatever, the one that's outside. They were hard estimates.
Mhm.
yeah, that would, I can see why it would be, and this, they would have to look at 168 and say,
Just so we have something a little more concrete.
10 of these are, you can throw them out once we've made sure that there's no information that's not duplicated, But
Because
Yeah.
some of the maps have a burial, some of them don't. So you'd have to take the information from one map and know enough to know it belongs on the next one later. And it's not that easy to figure out.
Yeah,
Because we tried.
we did make an attempt at these when we found that there were 13 copies of the exact same map. They
But
were
with different
used by
information on it.
different people. So the water department had little marks on their map. The burial person had another, and the person who was selling plots had something else. And then that job went to someone else, and he had yet. So it was a bit of a puzzle to put together, and it would have to be something that we don't have any idea how long it would take a reasonable person to do that, so. Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yes, how much, or is any money provided to the upkeep, the preservation, the record keeping of the ancient cemetery from the DPW budget?
The DPW budget has a cemetery budget. It's rather small, but it's not itemized by cemetery. It's just simply for cemeteries.
So what you guys do is basically mow the grass and stuff like that.
Absolutely right.
So there's nothing within the budget to replicate.
To do what they're doing, no, not at all.
Okay, so,
In fact, we can hardly mow the grass. We have
Right.
to have like volunteers help us with that. But
They have a very,
we have one person in the cemetery that maintains,
And
you
7
know,
cemeteries.
sevens, and which is why we exist.
I
because
know.
Everybody
It's just-
looked at this and said, we've got to do
I
something.
guess there's so much I need to learn about the needs of this town because it seems like stuff like this is just,
Should be.
if it wasn't for people like you, it would go to hell in a
Wouldn't get
handbasket.
done.
it wouldn't get done, right? I mean, earlier in the meeting, there was a reference to 2008. And all departments in the town were cut 20%. We had 4 people in cemetery.
Oh, wow.
Wiped out, you know.
Wow.
Yeah,
So-
and I'm not here to debate, but the thing is, we went through some years where the economy was pretty darn good. And people were talking about the economy being pretty darn good, and real estate prices have increased and all the rest of it. And it doesn't seem to translate into, now we're in good times. It's very simple for the town to say, now we're in bad times, we have to cut 20%. But I never hear the opposite. I never hear the opposite of that. And I guess it's just aggravating from the point of view that I took on in the other issue, that these things they would be digging up the cemetery like they do in Italy underneath Rome, because, oh gee, there used to be a cemetery here 100 years ago, because the darn town didn't take care of it. Because it just went to hell. And it's, God bless these people for doing this stuff. And I don't get it. I don't get why there isn't in a DPW or somewhere in the town budget a slice of the pie for this type of work. Even if it's symbolic, for goodness sake, somebody trying to do something. Is the ancient cemetery still, people still get buried there? I don't even know.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's say I die and my wife wants to put me in the ancient cemetery.
Call
What the
Bill.
heck does she have to do?
Call Bill.
Yeah.
Well, I understand there are any open lots left to sell.
But how do
Right,
we know?
in ancient, right.
Yeah.
But,
So.
so you call Bill? Bill who? Crazy.
Check the website.
Yeah.
But it's such a part of history. I mean, when I was working with the Banks Hallett House, there's a piece of wood there with Ira Ryder, who was a carpenter.
Yeah.
If people renovate their houses in on the north side, and you take a piece of molding off, Ira Ryder would have writing on the back of that molding, And then one day I was driving around in the cemetery, and there was Ira Ryder, he's buried up
And
there.
that is the response we're getting. It's been really rewarding, and I think that's why so many volunteers have stayed.
It's the little stories.
It's that these are their people.
Yeah,
I've
and
seen people cry when they finally wiped off that stone
And can read it.
and they can actually read it. And, it's a child and they learn about that person, but that's their stone.
Yeah.
They're planting the daffodils there. That's their reward.
So the
Good.
town of Yarmouth, though, doesn't have any consciousness about this. They're gonna say, gee, we hope volunteers come along to help to take care of our cemetery for us.
Well,
Yeah, it's not just cemeteries, it's picking up litter on the edge of the road. We have volunteers that pick up litter on the edge of the road.
Are we that bad off in this town?
priorities.
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 Well, selectmen have a meeting coming up to discuss their
Right.
goals.
We're in the budget season.
Well, you know what? Again, I've seen, I mean, I know I'm a walking tour. I've only been here for 42 years. So the thing is, always the same story. We can't. Although there are some areas, I think they've been good for the schools, and maybe that's, I think they. I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry.
Ladies, thank you for your good work.
Thank
No,
you.
I think we all,
Help us
to some
continue.
degree, agree.
I know.
The
I
whole
always,
thing is about, you can't go and say tax increase.
yeah,
but
you
the
can.
mon-
Yeah, you
Yeah, you
can.
can, but that's there. That's how we got to this.
Yeah, but you know, tax increase, and we talk about, oh, town meeting. Town meeting is a small percentage of this town.
Mhm.
You know how many people show up at town
Yeah.
meeting?
Actually, did pretty good at this last.
Well, last one wasn't bad. And the other thing I find, to one of them on a soapbox, is I think this town meeting and ones just before have been more benevolent than they've been in the past. Maybe because the group, the demographic has come from a different place. I didn't come from the Depression. I don't have that kind of history. I come from something else where, just a different kind of a background. But I think it's been more benevolent in some ways. And I just like to see it continue and the selectmen get the message that, it's okay to spend some money. It's okay to tick the taxes up a bit. I know it's hard for some people, but you know what? For some other people, it isn't so hard. So I don't know. I know it's complicated. But But if we constantly say we can't raise taxes, the town meeting will never approve it.
Right.
Give it a try, see what happens.
All right, don't want to forget, Nate, do you have any questions, Nate?
No question. Again, thank you very much for all your hard work.
Liz?
No, I don't think I have any questions. I agree with Christine that some backup material as far as the finances are concerned is necessary because we ask it from everyone else. But I do think this project is extremely worthy and valuable for the legacy of our community and demonstrating just how important these people contributed to our community is necessary. So thank you for all of your work. And Paul, yes, I understand the frustration.
Thank you.
But, you know, as far as this is concerned, it would really need a specialized person for the genealogy, the research, and the care and love for each of these gravestones to be done correctly. It's a really, it's a science, and it's not just a simple scrubbing with water. And, you know, that actually it's proof that it'll ruin the stones. If you do it improperly, it actually reverses or pushes the damage even further at a higher rate. So I agree that we just need to, and the people of the Historical Society, please, I actually beg you not to scrimp on your salaries. You pay for you get what you pay for. So make sure that if there is value and you really want this done correctly, get the best. You know, CPC is we're offering, and this is an opportunity for you to do it correctly from the beginning. So do not, it may be an intern to learn from an expert, but don't just settle for something thinking that you're going to get more bang for your buck from a smaller percentage rate. So please use caution and think long-term as far as the product that you're going to get. Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks, Liz. Anybody else have any questions? I just said, which kind of relates to what Liz and Christine were asking. I would think you could get, like you were talking about, a letter, just get more of an idea from, if you put down an RFP, I'd like to know for the 5,000, what are we getting for that?
Yeah, I did a scope of services. I did an RFP.
So were they going to be able to do it for 5,000?
Our idea, which is not probably.
That's what I'm getting at. I don't think it can be our idea, because I have our ideas in my business too.
Right.
And I ask somebody how much it is.
We
my
just
idea.
thought that the committee would maybe sit for $5,000. And our idea was people would do what they could up to $5,000.
Then I think we should get a better idea of what they can do
And
for
I don't know
5,000.
how to achieve that.
I don't either.
Or you could have an old stone and it's broken in 3 pieces, you know, what would an estimate be?
But their job would be to come and give us a 5-year plan about what needs to be done the first year, what needs to be done the second year, what things can be left to the 3rd year. And it's not maybe just fixing a broken stone. It might be resetting. They're all set in cement, which that was when this was done, but it's like the worst thing you could ever do. So it might take them a day to work on 1.5 stones because it's incremental. They do first have to get it out of the cement without further damaging it. Then they have to repair, and the repairs are done piece by piece by piece, and each one has to cure and set. So they're not going to just do one stone and move to the next. They'll probably select 3 or 4 projects and be working on all of them at the same time. So we could say, come for 3 days and this is what we'll pay you, do as much as you can do. The ones that are listed, at least 2 of them, I know very well, and I know their work. And I don't even know if we can get them because they go all over the country, but I don't know how to get what you need.
What I'm worried about is, and George, you're probably gonna answer it better than, I'm just worried about, you say there's $5,000. I don't know these people, you do.
Yeah.
They come in, they say, all right, we did one stone, it took us a long time, 5,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
we're protecting the taxpayers'
No, I
money.
know. I
So
understand.
how we get around that, I don't know, but I don't want it to be on us.
Mhm.
No, I don't either.
Mhm.
I mean, we don't either, so.
Well, maybe ask them about a past project. You know, what did they do? And how much did it cost, you know, for this stone?
I think we'll have to send them aerial views of the photo of the
Resetting
cemetery.
costs $200.
Even they could give a guesstimate as to what they
Okay.
think they could do.
Okay,
Okay.
Not a written proposal, I understand that, but a guesstimate. And then if they're
Yeah,
worthy and
I
they have a
tried to
good
do a scope
reputation.
of services that was specific.
Yeah.
That's in the
Maybe
papers.
ask them, you know, a project that's completed already, you know, and recently and maybe what the cost. was,
I see.
something like that. They'll give us a ballpark.
Anything, just
Yeah.
yeah.
instead of just,
And if you want to look them up, their websites are there, they're listed. There's a fair amount of information about the Fannin and Lehrer Company, for example. And Joe Ferranini is somebody that I know has, and he's very good. But I'll find out from them
Okay.
how they can
George.
give us an estimate.
It needs to be done, but we
Yeah.
need a little more.
We'll try to send them an aerial picture of the,
because it's easier to do it
cemetery
now
and the stone.
than to do it on town meeting floor.
Oh, okay.
Will do.
George,
So what I suggest, and it's not too dissimilar to what we've had to do with the Memorial Arch, is ask your prospective bidders to send what the assessment component of this would be.
Mhm.
So, you know, tell them what you're looking for them to do, how much will it cost for you to come out to do the assessment? And then to, the suggestion is to then say, you know, what are the steps that you go to? It doesn't have to be exhaustive. And just give us a range per stone. And that way, we now then have the roadmap.
Okay.
And we can see how much the assessment is gonna be. That could be several $1,000s.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then, you know, okay, then a stone that's like this would cost this, would cost this. So they must
Yeah.
be able to grade the stones that are, you know, real bad and just an estimate.
Yeah.
And that way you now have,
I don't think they work that way, but I will send them images of a lot of broken stones and say, you know, give us a ballpark figure. We'll
yeah,
do that.
which again is what, you know, we
We'll
had
do
to
that.
do on the arch. And then the procurement department will send out a more specific, you know, okay, now we need, you know, your quote. You know, once we, you know, make the decision, so,
Even for 5,000,
say again,
even for 5,000.
well,
they
you
need
you
the
don't have to get formal bids.
Okay.
But there is a process.
George says that even the assessment could cost a couple of $1,000s.
Right.
But at least then we'd have something,
I understand.
the roadmap to go forward.
We've offered to house them here with us.
I know they
So
can
that it
stay
would
at
be-
George's.
Great open deck in the back. We'll just have a fire pit. You know.
All right.
All
So
right, great job, guys.
I
Thank
think
you.
you understand what we're looking for. And it's just, you know, we want to have answers to all the questions when we get to town meeting. Because you never know who's going to be here and what they're going to do is ask you a question you're not prepared to answer.
One guy that asked the question.
I wasn't going to name names.
We will.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks,
project.
Robbie. Thank you.
Thank
Keep
you.
us current. Keep doing it.
Thanks, Roby.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, everybody, great presentation. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, are we doing
Now,
The,
George.
George?
Okay. So what I'm presenting for you is a proposal to restore and preserve two iconic art pieces here in the town. One, the 1886 town water pump, and also a 1928 wrought iron memorial arch that was created in 1928 by a wrought iron artisan in Sandwich, whose name was Percival Percy Forgue, Forgue. He's of French derivation. And I Googled it to say, how do I pronounce this name? Because I was saying Forgue, and it tells you Forgue, F-O-R-G, the U-E is silent. So when I first saw that, I thought that they meant the Percival Forge, F-O-R-G-E. But turns out that, he was a World War I veteran, naturalized citizen, and the documentation that we had, a couple of surveys, one from the Mass Historical Commission, and then one in 1979, there was a survey done called Save Outdoor Sculpture. And those records and documents now reside in the Smithsonian Institute. So the memorial arch is in the Smithsonian Institute. And one of the things we didn't know was who designed the arch. We have subsequently found out, after talking to family that's still in Yarmouthport, that in fact, the arch was designed by a world-noted artist whose name is Frank W. Benson. 1862 to 1951, he started out as a impressionist artist. And then for 20 years, he and his brother bought a piece of land down here. They were hunters. And he started to do etchings and dry points. And I went and bought a book. And some of his etchings are amazing in comparison to what is on the arch. Because the arch has hunters, it has birds in flight, it has grass. And so both Percy Forgue and Mr. Benson were artists par excellence. So we have true works of art here that unfortunately have not been maintained, and they are in severe need of preservation. So, so what we have here is the request. And I assume folks have read as to what the benefit. There's a lot of support and support letters here, and
You probably get more support if you went Yarmouthport, if you wanted to.
oh,
I'm
well,
sure you could get 100 letters. So.
well, we do, and so let's take a look at the budget. So to summarize, I identified committee. I've set up a committee myself, Melanie Barron, and a trustee from Historical Society of Old Yarmouth, and Sue Bonnell. And Sue Bonnell lives on Summer Street. And Sue Bonnell had a story that when she was 6 years old, every night she would go down, take a little stool, and turn the light on at the arch. So she's particularly attuned to this, and
She passes it every day.
so so very particular expertise needed to preserve this piece of art, this piece of wrought iron. And so we identified 5 potential preservationists. We sent a request for quote out to 5, and we didn't get any replies. So then followed back up with them and asked why. Got one call back. Rika Smith McNally, she called and explained that her company just got a big job moving a whole museum and that she wasn't going to be able to bid. She gave me 2 names to follow up with, one of which we got a quote from, and that's on Daedalus. And then at 2 minutes past the date of when we had asked the quotes to be in, I got a call from a second bidder, McKay Lodge Conservation Laboratory. They're in Ohio. And so I had a good chat with the conservationist there who said, oh, by the way, my family used to visit Dennisport. So knew the Cape, knew the environment, knew the salt air, and asked him if he could give an estimate of what the cost would be. And I wasn't sure. Yeah, that's included here, in the quote from Thomas Podnar. It's like page 17 towards the end. So the 2 quotes are for Daedalus. They have estimated that their assessment to come out and do the assessment would be $10,000, and that the conservation would be $50,000 for a total of $60,000. McKay Lodge estimated that their assessment would be $6,000 with a conservation of $40,000. And both of these quotes include coming and deinstalling the arch and the pump. They would take it back to their offices to be conserved. McKay Lodge is in Oberlin, Ohio. So they would come out, they would deinstall it, they would take it out there. So the cost differential between McKay and Daedalus is $14,000. And so we have 2 quotes. And anecdotally, a year ago, when we were thinking of YC doing this, I got in touch with another provider who is on the list here. His name is Boccaccio, and they're from Canton. And so I had asked the principal there, give me a sense of what this is going to cost. He says, well, I had to go and see it. And I said, I understand that this is just an estimate. And he sent the estimate in, and it was $60,000. So I called him back and I said, did you put an extra 0 here? Is this meant to be 6,000? And he said, no, because when you come out, you don't know how deep the deterioration is on the interior of the wrought iron. He said, sometimes you have to, it's not salvageable and it has to be recast. And if you get into having to recast one of these panels, then you have to make it cast. You have to pour the wrought iron, you have to put it back. So the cost depends, right? And again, until they can come out and do an official assessment, then, again, this is a budget that would be not to exceed. And not sure how much detail you want to go into, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. And one of the things that I've done is researched Percy Forge. I went on to Digital Commonwealth, and I found a photo of the sign.
I know where that is.
Yep. And it's 201 Route 6A, and I went to Sandwich yesterday to their archives. And here's a photo of, this is the yarn, Black Sheep Yarn building now. This is a photo that was in the archives, and you can just barely see it. And what's the sign say?
Iron.
Iron.
It was right at 6 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the sign is no longer there.
Is that the antiques building?
It's this is Black Sheep Yarn Company now.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember that sign and it changed over to the yarn shop maybe what, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, you had a good memory. So I guess it was on a post and the post broke. And the family went down to Florida and they came back. The town had put it inside the barn but this, so this clearly indicates, and turns out that Percy also did wrought iron for the St. John's Episcopal Church in Sandwich and also St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Hyannis. Some unbelievable wrought iron work. So he was a true artisan. So this is really valuable for the town to finally pay up and fix it. So
What about the pump though? What's the story on the pump?
the pump is dated 1886. So apparently Mabel Jenks, who is the wife of Anthony Simpkins III, the pump and trough used to be
Figuring that out.
outside of a school further down on 6A and then outside on a fire station. And so she had it moved down to the corner here in 1928 and put the arch around.
It's just a decoration, never a functioning pump.
That it was.
But I mean, you
Originally.
had that location.
No, that's right. It was just there.
We're
So,
gonna have to expedite stuff a little because there's people.
okay.
out
Yeah, I
there
forgot
running
there's
by,
Okay.
And they're waving.
Yeah, all right. So,
I'm just gonna go,
go ahead.
we got your presentation. Nate, do you have any questions with George?
No, great job, George. Look forward to seeing it completed. That's a great spot.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nate.
Yeah. Liz?
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Paul?
Oh, no, I think it's a great thing to try to do.
It's hard, I'm sure, trying to get responses with COVID and supply chain is.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to work against that. I don't want to discourage you, but.
No, I mean, I understand. I had to scramble to get 2 quotes, so I know what it's like.
Some
So,
people ask me, well, we need a quote from the plumber. I go, the plumber's gonna charge you $300 to come out here and quote it. And to change the faucet's gonna cost $300. So you decide. Christine?
All right, I think I'm good. I'm very pleased as a past president of the Historical Society.
I'm glad somebody's taking
I got
interest in this stuff.
One question, if you're going to go into the well, do you have to get a permit from Mass Historic to excavate?
there's no well there. It's a non-functional.
Just a facade.
It's a decorative thing.
But it's
goes
a
along with-
historical site, so do you need a permit?
I need a permit. We
You
need
know
a
who
permit.
who would know would be Jack.
We need a permit. We don't need a permit from Mass Historical Society
Okay.
because we are the voice of that. We do need a permit from the state because it's state property, so we'd have to get an access permit, which is part of the quote.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't need the historic, which is.
No. No,
Okay,
All right, we'll table the rest of the agenda. And we'll plan to meet next Wednesday at 3 o'clock for Friends of Bass River, which I hope to get out to you as soon as the application is complete.
Well, let us know, or let me know if we get the information that we requested. Do you have that yet?
Not complete, no.
That's a yes or no.
That's a no. That's a no. And adjourn George, and who seconded Paul? Thank you.
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, everyone, I am not gonna be here next week.
Okay, Liz.
All right, thank you.
All right, have a good visioning meeting, Liz.
Thank you. Bye.